Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Humane Blueprint podcast. I'm Christina, your coach with a heart for education and a mind for innovating learning spaces. I help educators and leaders, nonprofits, and educational organizations move from burnout and chaos to balance and clarity by rethinking how we lead, teach, and build our learning cultures. Today, we're jumping into something that feels really relevant, especially as many schools and programs are reviewing or revamping their curriculum right now. How to lead a curriculum shift in a way that is actually humane for yourself, your team, and ultimately your students. So, in this episode, we're going to explore how you can transform your curriculum development process into something that not only serves your students, but also speaks to their needs, embraces inclusivity, and sets them up for success. Step one, understand the why behind your curriculum revamp. I know we can fall into the habit with our curriculum cycles of just we review or revamp every year, every 3 to 5 years. Um, but it's important that before you dive into any change, even if it's anticipated or not, it is essential to ask yourself, why are we revamping the curriculum at this point in time? This is often the biggest question, no matter who I work with, that often gets skipped. Understanding the why is crucial for alignment within your district or your organization's mission, vision, and goals. And so we should be asking ourselves some key questions. Now, those key questions, you can ask yourself broad questions. For example, like, what are the pain points that our students have faced in when it came to learning this year? What are the challenges that our teachers are experiencing when it came to implementation and instructional practices? Is our current curriculum, is it outdated, or is it failing to meet the needs of all of our learners, considering the diverse landscape of learners that we have? And are we aiming to integrate more inclusive practices into our curriculum or digital literacy? Once you have answered these types of questions, it sets the foundation for every step moving forward. Remember, I always say that curriculum is a conversation first before there's any writing that gets done. So, in answering these questions and really anchoring to the why, gives you the direction, the clarity that's needed to create change so that it's meaningful and not just trendy. Step two, start with vision and not perfection. When curriculum revamps typically start, the energy is usually extremely high, but so is the pressure, right? People want new things to be perfect right away. But in my experience, the most transformational curriculum work doesn't start with a plan. It starts with a conversation and a vision. That means asking and engaging in conversations around what do we want our students to experience? What kinds of thinking and creating and questioning do we want them doing? And what skills do we want them walking away with? Not just at the end of the unit, but at the end of the year. And I find that we often think at the end of the unit, leading to the end of their journey as learners. And we miss that gap between what's taking us from this year and that arc of learning that carries us through to the end of the year. And just as important is another question of how do we want our educators to feel when they're implementing this curriculum, right? Because if they don't have buy-in, and if your team feels overwhelmed and confused, then the most beautiful curriculum won't lead in any type of deeper learning or significant student outcomes. It just won't land. So here's some practical steps. Host a visioning session with your team, your teachers, your instructional leaders before touching any scope and sequence documents or curriculum maps that you've previously created, right? Remember, curriculum first and foremost is a conversation about what we value and who we value. Number two, ask reflection questions. Remember to engage in that deeper dialogue. What do we want students to be able to do by the end of this course? What values should this curriculum reflect? And what's one thing we hope students remember and carry over 5 years from now, 3 years from now? And finally, create a shared vision statement that's used as a touchstone throughout the revamp process. One thing I do in my work when I work with teams or organizations to revamp curriculum is that before we touch anything, we sit and we identify who the learner is. What are all the pieces that we can imagine that create that student? And we have conversations based around that. And then it becomes easier and more clearer to really define how we are going to map out this curriculum. Step 3, build with and not for. Now, this is where a lot of leaders make the shift from control to collaboration and empowerment. Instead of designing curriculum for teachers, for students, what does it look like to build with them? When it comes to curriculum mapping and supporting, there's a multi-step process that we must use when we're developing curriculum if we really want it to be a curriculum that is inclusive and really designing great curriculum. And so bringing in key stakeholders at different points within the curriculum process is really going to help to get that clarity around what are we building? Who are we building for? And we'll ultimately answer the question how we're going to build it. This is one of the most humane things I believe that you can do when it comes to curriculum development. And honestly, one of the most effective, because when people are a part of the process, they're more invested in the outcome. And that doesn't mean you need to get 15 people rewriting every standard, but it does mean slowing down to include the voices of those who actually implement and experience the curriculum. So here are some practical steps. Create focus groups or advisory teams that include a mix of teachers, instructional coaches, students, even family members, and community members to give insight to the curriculum. Use protocols. One simple one is I like, I wish, I wonder. I often use it with team members that I'm working with to get feedback on existing curriculum development or proposed changes in a more objective way. And pilot new curriculum components in small segments with teacher leader partners, gathering feedback very early and often. Step 4, think systems, not silos. Revamping curriculum does not happen in a vacuum, right? One of the mistakes that I often see is trying to redesign content first without thinking about the systems that actually can support it. So I'll give you an example. Imagine that we've created this beautiful inquiry-based unit, but the pacing guide still forces teachers to rush through 3 of the objectives in a week. It's not going to work. If your grading policy, for example, is still rewarding completion over critical thinking skills, then your assessments won't match your outcomes. Instead of asking, what content do we need to change? We also need to, in addition, ask, what structures need to shift so this content can live and breathe in the classroom? And if so, how? So here are 3 practical steps. 1, review your assessment, pacing, and grading policies alongside the curriculum changes to ensure that there is really deep alignment. Build in collaborative planning time into your schedule for the year so that teachers can co-create lessons and have time to actually reflect. And then consider designing a feedback loop where data from implementation can inform the ongoing curriculum decisions, right? Not just a one and done rollout. Finally, step 5, plan for progress, not perfection. One of the biggest things you can do as a leader is name that from the very beginning. Remember that curriculum development is an iterative process, right? That's why you're waiting 3 to 5 years to revamp or make major curricular changes, right? It is iterative because you do need time. Teachers need time to internalize, they need time to implement effectively. You need time to collect data on what's working and what's not, and what those learner outcomes look like. So, letting your team know that this is a working draft always. Normalize iterations, right? Celebrate what is working and stay curious about what's not, depending on your learners, your teachers, and their capacities. That mindset shift alone, from product to progress, is what makes curriculum revamp sustainable. So, here are 3 practical steps. Create a check in schedule. I recommend every 4 to 6 weeks for feedback and reflections. Use shared progress trackers or curriculum reflection tools to gather real time implementation insights. One of the tools that I used was a curriculum mapping system. And what was great about the curriculum mapping system was that it allowed teachers, as they uploaded their lessons, to also give us notes within each lesson plan. So over time, we were able to see from a systems level of where teachers may have struggled, or where students may have struggled here, or where more time was needed. And so it really became a tool for instructional coaches and curriculum developers to really consider, hey, if teachers are saying this, but we planned for this, okay, well, now let's look at this, what's going on with students. They're needing more time. What about that content and that piece of curriculum is asking for more time that we didn't account for? And it became a much more richer, engaging conversation, not just around, oh, we're teaching this day, but really how was learning and the process and all of the components coming into play to really design and craft these learning experiences within the curriculum. And lastly, frame every curriculum change as a living document, subject to revisions based on real world classroom experiences. A lot of times we may plan scope and sequences, or we plan curriculum maps. It's a one and done. We wipe our hands, we give it to teachers and say, you know the routine, go teach. And intuitively, sometimes teachers ultimately struggle with that because pacing may not always align to where students actually are, and there may need to be more time. And so having that information, having that system of communication, having the ways that we're incorporating things like PD and coaching to really align with the curriculum deepens that teaching and learning experience for our schools, our teachers, and ultimately the outcomes for our students. So, in closing, leading curriculum revamps isn't just about standards and units, it's about people. And the best curriculum revamps that I've ever been a part of were the ones where people felt heard, held, and supported. So if you're in the middle of a curriculum shift or about to start one, remember, start with your why, start with vision, build with people, think in systems, and commit to progress. That's the heart of the Humane Blueprint. I want to thank you for tuning in. If this episode sparks some ideas or questions for you, I would love to hear from you. You can send me a message, or you could share this with a teammate who's doing this work too. Let's keep making learning spaces more humane, one blueprint at a time. If this episode sparks some ideas or questions for you, then let's keep the conversation going. You can find me on Instagram, Facebook, Humane in the Membrane LLC, or connect with me through LinkedIn. Or you can visit our website at humaneinthemembranellc.com, or just email us at hello@humaneinthemembranellc.com for tools, workbooks, and our upcoming workshops. Don't forget to follow the show, share it with someone leading in change in curriculum development, and leave a review if it resonated with you. I appreciate you being here, and I'll see you next time on the Humane Blueprint podcast. Bye.